Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. This is BRN AM for Wednesday, July 17th, 2024. And our top story today, food brands drop prices to lure inflation-weary shoppers. And joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, David Anderson is an economist at Texas A&M University. David, so great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Glad to be with you today.
And before we get into prices, how did your semester go?
Smooth sailing. I wasn't teaching any classes in the spring semester, so I'm sort of getting ready for the fall semester already. So starting to get ready. It's getting here closer and closer.
Yeah, putting that syllabus together, huh?
Putting that together, make sure I got all the kind of the readings I've got assigned. I don't really have a textbook. It's just that there's not a real good one for this course. So we do a lot of readings out of some scientific journals, and we do some popular press readings, and really kind of topic focused.
Very interesting. Well, good luck with that. And hey,
Thanks.
a couple more weeks, you'll be back on campus, and it'll be football season again. All right, David, let's and good luck to the Aggies, I think they're called. Okay,
Aggies.
David, let's talk about prices. We just had inflation report. Let's talk about food prices. Give us the skinny, if you will, on food pricing.
Well, as we looked at that CPI, Consumer Price Index for food, it really leveled off. It's basically flat versus the month before. And so, but if we compared to a year ago, it's certainly higher than it was a year ago, but that month-to-month change has really flattened out to not much change at all. So that's really the good news, is that we're really starting to see the increases that we've seen have really begun to slow.
Yeah, and David, I know you're really have a focus on the beef and cattle industry. You mentioned off camera, we were talking about vacation. You mentioned kind of drought conditions. First, how are the rain conditions, the water conditions, which is an essential part of farming, but how is that, and how is the price of beef doing?
Yeah, so you mentioned drought. The data or the chart I like to use is the drought monitor map. And you see that picked up a lot of places in popular news and whatnot. And if we looked at Texas, you would really see the state kind of split in half, an east and central, and then a west. And the west part continues to have a lot of drought, particularly the southwest part. The eastern half of the state, boy, we've had a lot of rain, and folks got even more from that storm Beryl last week. And so, we got some haves and have-nots on the drought side of things. And certainly, that does certainly affects cattle production, livestock production, because it starts with rainfall and grass. But certainly that western part continues to struggle with drought as well. If we look at retail beef prices, there's the CPI data reports two different beef prices. One is a sort of choice beef. And so choice is that USDA grade you may see on the beef that you buy at the store. That actually is actually below a year ago, just a little bit, and flat to a year ago. And so that's an area that we've actually seen falling prices. Now, we like to compare, us economists, we compare oftentimes to a year ago. And I think that's an important point, because a lot of people look at that and say, well, it doesn't matter to me. What's it doing in the short term? Is it higher than it was last month? Well, a lot of these food items and a lot of items we buy have a significant amount of seasonality to them. We could think about beef is like grilling season. We hit the summer, everybody's buying hamburgers and hot dogs or steaks to throw on the grill. So there's this seasonality to not only demand, but supply. So when we compare to a year ago, we're really kind of factoring out that seasonality effect in a simple way. But, for me as a consumer, I'm interested in what it did versus, last month or over the last 2 weeks. And if we look at retail beef prices, they were pretty much flat, almost the same price as they were last month, and a little bit less than a year ago.
Well, certainly, I guess, trending in the right direction. And I think like an economist, I guess we have to see what happens next month, because a lot of people are really focused on these CPI and inflation numbers because what the Fed may do. David, last question before we go to a commercial break. I want to ask you about fast food restaurants. A lot of Americans being more diligent, maybe being a little bit more fine picking of where they go to eat, going to some of the fast food restaurants. And from what I've read, the fast food restaurants have started to bring their costs down, their prices down. I don't know if their costs are down, but their prices are down. They're offering like value meals, $5, $7, $10, significantly below where prices have been. What's the impact here? Where's the impact, I should say?
Well, we've really started to see that because if we looked at the CPI data, we could break food into two parts: food consumed away from home, which is really our restaurants and things like that, and food at home, which is our grocery store shopping. And those have been moving at very different rates. The food away from home, implying those restaurant prices, have really gone up much more so than food at home. And so now we see, a lot of our fast food places hit by this type of really rising prices, rising costs. And folks, the evidence is that folks are switching. They move to a little more food at home. And so they're trying to, how can I put a meal in front of people at a price point that they can afford or that they're willing to pay? So we are seeing those. I think one of the interesting things that we continue to see in the sort of the featuring the value meals. I saw an interesting one the other day that instead of a big hamburger, it was actually like the kids' meal size hamburger. And so the meal deal, the value meal was still there: fries, Coke, the hamburger, but it was the smaller burger. And so, but they're really struggling to get something that folks are willing to buy and afford to buy. Maybe that's a good deal for me and my waistline. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah, I
not
mean,
so good for my wallet, but
yeah, good for your wallet and good for your waistline, though you look great from this angle. But just maybe White Castle, which is I don't know if you've heard of White Castle, which is a chain here they have the smaller burgers. So maybe they're onto something, but it just kind of makes me think of the word shrinkflation, which is you pay the same or a little bit less, but you really are getting a little bit less. And I think we saw this some of the snack manufacturers. David, I need to take a very quick break. We come back, we're going to pick up the conversation, talk about farmers in America. We talked a little bit about it, but we're going to talk more. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the First Lifestyle and Wellness Network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device. Welcome back. We're joined this morning by David Anderson of Texas A&M University. David, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Glad to be with you.
All right, David, you talked about the drought monitoring drought, and Hurricane Beryl did a lot of damage, but it also brought water to certain parts of the country. Taking a step back, though, how are our farmers doing? And by farmers, I mean they could be farming the cattle, raising cattle for slaughter. They could be growing vegetables and whatever. So how is our farming community doing?
Well, I think one of the things I would mention is we're really seeing and have been for several years what we call a cost price squeeze. Our costs have gone up, but the prices that farmers sell their products for really haven't. They fluctuate, they go up and down, but costs certainly are higher. And as we think about, conditions across agriculture, we really have to look at some different crop and livestock specific areas because, so much of agriculture is much more specialized, if you will. So one of the things going on is we have certainly lower prices for corn and soybeans. And I mentioned those because that's a lot of our Midwestern agriculture, right? Corn and soybean farms. We've got really lower prices. Last year, we had a record large crop, so that the crop is bigger, the supplies on the market are bigger, and that's driven prices lower. And so, that's part of it. We might think about the livestock part where we think of, and I'm going to use livestock broadly, cattle, hogs, chickens, turkeys, and the like. Well, though that corn and soybean is really an input to livestock agriculture. We feed chickens and pigs, and we feed them corn and soybean meal, and so those lower prices there are really hurting part of agriculture, but it's actually boosting the livestock side because it's reducing those production costs. And so, it's really a mixed bag. It kind of depends on where you are and what you are.
David, you talked about, well, we talked before in the first segment about drought. We talked about maybe profitability. Is it still profitable to be a farmer? When I say farmer, a family farm, I'm not talking about a big commercial enterprise that has become a farm. I'm talking about becoming staying in the farming world. There are a lot of family farms out there that have been generational farmers. It is still an attractive vocation. Clearly, we need to eat. I think America is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, exporter of food. So we need to grow food for the world. But is it still an attractive vocation for young and up and coming farmers?
That's a hard one to answer, and the reason is we think about agriculture, the cost to get in, to start from scratch, really become a hurdle that's very difficult to overcome. The whether it's acquiring land, tractors, equipment, all of that those are very difficult hurdles. And so, on that side of it, it's pretty tough to do. And we might argue too that, most of our farms are family farms. It's the size we may think about. Farms are bigger than they used to be. They may still, they're still oftentimes a family. It's just that the farms are bigger. But, I still think it's an attractive, there are attractive parts of it, and there's certainly areas to start for those who are motivated to do that. On the demand side for food, as you say, there's a lot of interest from consumers in buying more locally than maybe they used to. That's been a growing segment, and that creates the opportunity for some smaller farms, for some niche markets, for things like that certainly people are taking a shot at and giving a try and see what they can do. I think we see a real growth area in that particular area, as opposed to the difficulties of sort of large scale, big commercial crops or big crops, corn, soybeans, cotton, things like that. So we have this really market differentiation of opportunity, I would say.
And David, what about the use of technology and so much of maybe in other sectors, AI is being talked about. It's probably no different in the farming industry. I mean, I could think about AI being used to help facilitate maybe watering or when to pick certain crops. I mean, it probably, and that itself could help level the playing field for maybe new entrants or small versus large farming communities.
Yeah, so I mean, we've had these huge shift in technology and growth in technology use. For a lot of people might be surprised to know we have a lot of tractors with a GPS unit on them. So when you're in the tractor, but it's driving itself in a way, and so you may have to turn around. But other than that, that's whether you're planting, cultivating, doing those things, that's very different than it used to be. Technology in terms of new seed varieties, the various kinds of pesticides and herbicides, just new technology across there. There's all kinds of work in the area of robotics and things like that to help in harvesting, particularly high value fruits and vegetables. So there's just a host of those things going on. Now, one of the tough parts, I think of it as an economist in terms of technology adoption, sometimes that technology is pretty expensive. And that creates a hurdle there, that small farms, do they have the volume or the size to match the technology? And so that's that becomes a difficulty. But at the same time, boy, there's a lot of exciting new technology in this field, like there is in everything else.
Yeah, David, last question. I just read a United Nations report that I think the expected population in the world is expected, I think it's by 2080, expected to go from 8 billion people on the planet to 10 billion. And when I saw that number, I thought of you because you're one of the 10, you'll be one of the 10 billion, but also feeding 10 billion people. Are we globally, and this is kind of a, I don't know, out of left field kind of question, but are we set up, we meaning the world set up to feed that many people? Forget putting them to work, forget caring for them with healthcare. Those are big issues outside of this, but do we have the resources to feed that many people? And if not, what do we need to do?
Well, I really think we do. And I say that because we just talked a little bit about technology. Some of the technology that we have done has increased our productivity dramatically, where we're increasing the amount that we can produce on that same area of land. Now, we know we take land out of production all the time. Heck, just go around the city and the suburbs as we build more apartments and houses, and urban growth or urban sprawl takes out farmland. Yet so much of our technology really boosts our productivity. And we've done a lot of this boosting in productivity, particularly here, particularly in Europe. And there's other parts of the world that have not made those productivity leaps yet. So the potential for growth in productivity and production efficiency, and just producing more to feed a growing world population, I think there's a lot of room to grow to meet those population needs. Now, there's some challenges: water for irrigation, climate change, a whole host of things, including, in some ways we have pushback in some areas against some of these technologies, which leads to reduced productive capacity, reduced production. So there's a lot of challenges there, but on balance, I think we have the ability to do that.
Well, I hope, and I'm sure that by the time 2080 rolls around, David, I don't know if I'm going to be here, but hopefully both of us will be here. But hopefully we'll have developed new techniques. Vertical farming is one I can think of, and we'll have incorporated some of the lessons that we've learned over the past several decades. David, we're going to have to leave it there. Great conversation as always. Thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thanks. Anytime. I'm glad to do it.
That wraps up this episode of BRNAM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news in lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content? Well, then visit our website. Hey, we're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN AM of a very special guest and, of course, another important topic. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe. Keep on saving. Don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.